Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming. This past Sunday it was Games Day at my club, which is something that happens about once a year, in which we actually play games from 10 AM to about 10 PM. And last year I played an assortment of games. I ran a game. The first game we played was Starship Troopers, and the second game was Star Blazer, run by me. The third game was Heroes Unlimited, which was absolutely awful and was covered in my worst RPGs I've ever played video. Other games that were being run at the time were Space 2099, or 1899, sorry, Space 1899, Paranoia XP, and trying to remember, no, I think that was it. So, there was a mix of games. This year, there was a similar mix of games. I was running Bioshock, and that was a game that went very well. I played a game called The Abyss, in which people consigned to hell had to make their way out of it by basically getting rid of their vices, somehow overcoming them through roleplay, and that was a fantastic game based on the Tunnels and Trolls system. There was also a game of hack and slash Dungeons and Dragons that was run that I hear was quite good. There was a game of On Her Majesty's Arcane Service, which likewise I heard had been very good, and I'm trying to remember whether there was anything else. Another game of Starship Troopers. Now, the game that I'm covering in this video, and the reason it's a sequel to the worst RPGs I've ever played, is because this was one of the worst RPGs I've ever played. Again, as I've pointed out before, it's not the game itself. Games can be fantastic or they can be shit, but it's based basically on who's running it, who's playing it, and basically how well the group goes together. So, arguably, a game of Cinnabar or Fatal could be brilliant if your DM was brilliant, although I've yet to see it myself. Arguably, like I say, it could be great. This was a game of Shadowrun 2nd edition, in which we were playing members of the Zombie Squad, an elite branch of police force in Birmingham, in the West Midlands, 2023. Now, the first problem with Birmingham is it's not really the kind of dystopic, futuristic place you think of when you think of a cyberpunk Shadowrun future. It's a grey wasteland, full of people that talk like this and almost constantly sound fairly down. I'm a brum. That's the problem, and alright, that's a stereotype. Birmingham may not always be like that, and people from Birmingham may not always be like that, but I've been to Birmingham and they are like that. It's not really what you think of as a fast-paced city, despite it being one of the biggest cities in the UK. But that was our setting. We were Zombie Squad, so named because we were the 26th Squad, Z. We could have been Zulu Squad, but no, we were Zombie Squad. And our task was to defuse certain situations involving special types of people. You know, the freaks, the elves, the orcs, the dwarves, the sorts of people you find in Shadowrun using magic and decking into things. So we were kind of anti-Shadowrunners. And as we were patrolling, we had all been split up. This was the GM's caveat, that we were all in different areas of the city at the beginning of the game. A convenience store suddenly had a hostage situation. Killer, one of our squad members, was the first guy there. He was closest to the situation, and started defusing the hostage situation in his usual ruthless manner. This is why his nickname was Killer. And we all stated our intentions that we were on our way to the convenience store, that we would defuse this situation promptly. So myself and an elf colleague by the name of Legless, that was his nickname, my nickname was Bell, we leapt into our squad car, we threw our donuts out the car and our hot coffee in the face of an old woman, and we drove. Not very far, because the GM focused entirely on Killer and one of the other player characters that showed up. We weren't that far away, as far as I know. We were just, we role-played basically being stuck in traffic, listening to a New Romantics radio station hosted by Tony Blackburn, who somehow survived the bovine flu epidemic that hit the UK in Shadowrun, or in this setting of Shadowrun anyway. And presumably became an elf. Unfortunately, the only records that survived the epidemic were music from the songs from the 80s, and believe it or not, despite the fact I was born in 1985, I do know of some songs that came out before that time. Anyway, so whilst all this combat was going on, we kept stating, okay, we're still en route, GM kept ignoring us. We would occasionally point out, we're still in our car, we're still coming, and we'd radio to the others, we're coming to Birmingham. Half an hour later, we were still being ignored by the GM. We were in traffic, so basically we just resorted to role-playing, listening to New Romantics on the radio. We sang a bit of Save a Prayer for Me Now, a bit of Aha, a bit of Duran Duran, Aha, Wham, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Oh, what else? Here in my car, I feel safest of all. I've been driving in my car. Basically anything that could spring to mind from the 1980s, and yet still we couldn't bloody reach the crime scene. Finally, the hostage situation was over. This was after about 40 minutes of roleplay of us being stuck in a traffic jam. Me saying, oh wait, the traffic's moving. Oh no, sorry, handbrake on. Turn the radio up. That was it. That was our roleplay for 40 minutes. 40 minutes of my life role-playing being stuck in a traffic jam. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, when we arrived, the hostage situation had completely been resolved. Everything was done. All we got to do was appear in front of the camera and say, oh yeah, usually we're a lot more ruthless than this, you're lucky. So we got back to the police station, finally. We got stuck in traffic again, of course, because the GM kept ignoring us, myself and Andy, one of the fellow role players, and we found out about a serial killer that had been going around, killed about 9 men and women across Birmingham in vaguely horrific fashion across 9 days. One had been cut vertically in half, one had been fed into a wood chipper, and so on. And what we were trying to do at that point was establish a connection between all of the victims. There was no evidence at any of the scenes of the killer. Apparently there was no connection between any of the victims. We looked it up. We searched through everything. Did they go to a similar job? No. Were they all of the same race? No. Were they all of the same sex? No. Were they all killed in the same way? Clearly not. Was there any evidence? No. Basically, there was nothing to connect any of these victims, and so we were all a bit stumped until the GM suddenly decided to feed us some help. They all drove cars to the scenes of their death. How? How do we know that? How do we know they drove cars to the scenes of their death? No answer. So somehow we know exactly how they got to the scene of their death. Was their car there? Not always. Oh, so the killer may have driven it off. No answer there either. So basically, the one connection we had between our 9 victims was they could all drive a car. They were all motorists. It's as ridiculous a connection between victims as a detective on CSI or Law and Order saying, I don't know, I can't match the MO. What's the connection between these victims? Detective Stabler, I don't know, but I think they all own televisions. Or, I don't know, but I think they all had mobile phones, which is why they were targeted by this wacko. Or, it's fucking ridiculous. A connection between victims being that they can all drive. In 2023, I mean, driving is pretty popular now. God knows how popular it's going to be in another 20 years, or 13 years, sorry. That was a fucking stupid plot hook. So somehow, that was our only connection. Our only connection was the fact that they could drive. And where to go from there? We decided to investigate the last crime scene, which the GM wasn't expecting, because he didn't know at all what to do. We got there. The regular police were there. They muttered a bit about the zombie squad interfering, and while we were trying to just poke through some of the wreckage, apparently the body of this victim had been found in the front of her car, and yet all the blood had been around the back of the car. Interesting. Before we could get too comfortable, we heard sirens in another part of the city. We radioed over to the police to find out what was going on. The police said to us over the radio, "There's an incident." Yes, what's going on? Oh, sorry. What's going on? Come and see. Oh, sorry, I didn't make that out. You're going to have to come and see. So it could have been an assault, it could have been an arson, it could have been a burglary, it could have been a murder, it could have been a rape, could have been a fucking dog stuck up a tree. Not a cat, but a dog. It is Shadowrun, they named Fly. Do the police really that aloof that they will not tell each other what the crime is? And maybe life's boring in Shadowrun. They like a surprise. You don't know whether to bring the riot gear or not. You might just show up in civvies and get gunned down, but that life's a gamble. Be lucky. So we turned up at the murder scene of the 10th victim. Well, it would have been a murder scene. She hadn't quite died. And we tried to get a photo fit of the attacker. The GM wasn't prepared for this question. So he had to make something up on the spot, which was about as generic as going into, the ghetto and saying, my attacker. Actually, no, I'm not going to make any sort of comment there. But it was a really sort of, average height, short hair. He had a faraway look in his eyes. That was about it. Birmingham. He had a faraway look in his eyes, like he wished he was in a happier city with more life. So, the woman went to the hospital because she was injured, and this is where the tour de force occurred, ladies and gentlemen. Because of our comments to the journalists earlier on, one of our colleagues, Old Eric, had decided to slip some laxatives into our coffee. These hadn't taken effect yet, so stay tuned for the hilarious results. We accompanied the woman to her hospital bed and said we would guard the ward so that the attacker couldn't come back and finish her off. There were two policemen suddenly showed up, regular cops. They said, we'll guard her, and we said, no, we'll stay put. We're fairly certain the murderer will come back to finish her off. Suddenly the laxatives took effect. Myself and the elf, Legolas, had to run for the toilet. And not only this was the first time we had to roll dice in the entire game. We rolled dice to see not only whether we could tolerate shitting as much as we did. We had to roll dice to see how far away we could get from the cubicle before suddenly clamping up and needing to run back again. I have never role-played going for a shit before, and I never wanted to role-play going for a shit before. I have no desire to role-play making toilet. But there it is. This game is gave me an experience I'm genuinely touched by. It was my first experience of role-playing stool. So, once again, it was like being stuck in a traffic jam. Our two characters, Belle and Legolas, were sat in adjacent cubicles, shitting our guts out. And that was that. We couldn't contribute to the rest of the investigation because, as far as the GM was concerned, the laxatives had pretty much disemboweled us, Meanwhile, there was a sniper shot from a building adjacent to the hospital. There was a sniper who was trying to shoot at the woman, as we suspected someone attempted on her life. Mr. Plutt, the dwarf in our group, ascended the stairs of that building to get to the roof from which the shot was made. On his way up, on his ascent, he met someone carrying a briefcase. Deciding not to take any risks, he knocked the man out, zip-tied his wrists and ankles, basically hog-tying him. He then ascended to the roof, made sure there was no one else up there. He was sure there wasn't, so he came back down. Do you know what he found? Nothing. The man had gone. The man had just disappeared. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, and you've seen my worst role-playing games video before, you may have encountered something like that in Top Secret. One of the characters was chasing a woman down the stairs. I was running up the stairs, so we would intercept. She would run into one of us no matter which way she went. And yet, our two characters ran into each other. She had just disappeared. This is the same GM. And here we go again. Escher's mind maze, the staircase that leads nowhere. The man's gone. Gone. He's a cloud. He's Kaiser Soze. Just disappeared. The character, the NPC, was just gone. Disappeared. For the first time, the Top Secret, I played that game 6 years ago, and that's when that happened. I thought, Jesus Christ, this is stupid. Because as we looked over the edge of the building, we saw her running out of the main door. Somehow she had slipped past me. Maybe I blinked for too long. The same thing happened in this game. At that point, my car arrived, and I had to leave. So, Shadowrun 2nd Edition. Add it to the worst role-playing games I've ever played. And thank you very much for watching.